went to law school, believe it or not, okay? And basically because that was what you're supposed to do. And I didn't have any great desire. As embarrassing as it is, I never thought about not going. I just assumed that that's what I was supposed to do. Kind of sad in retrospect. I ended up not liking it, not doing very well. Once I discovered what lawyers actually did, I was like, oh my God, you definitely don't want to do that. And ended up working in politics, which is something I was very, very interested in, and something that I thought, you know, could leave a tiny little mark on the world. And so I ended up working in politics, and then became a speechwriter. I mean, truly because, I didn't set out to become a speechwriter. I just worked in politics. I actually started out sort of doing politics and then some policy, but it was something I ended up doing pretty well, and something that I enjoyed doing more than some of the policy, hardcore policy stuff, and more than the pure politics stuff, and ended up doing it reasonably well and enjoying it, and so I kept doing it, and really enjoyed doing it for a while. And then, you know, after a few years in the White House, I basically had, you know, not quite like Johnny, but a certain kind of dark nights of the soul about what was I doing, because I actually found the process not uplifting for a while. And I felt like here you are at sort of the highest reaches where you think you might be able to make a difference, and it's like, what the hell are we doing here? And I was just kind of disgusted with it. Meanwhile, just sort of getting to your question a little bit, I started noticing in the outside world, this is like mid-1990s, new companies started, and people working in new ways, and new technologies coming out. And I said, man, this is actually more interesting to me than politics is. And I think it actually is going to matter more in people's lives. And so I said, let's go out and check that out, and try to write under my own byline. I got sick of writing for other people. And so I just went out on my own, and the first thing that I did upon going out on my own was notice that there were all these other people who were out on their own. And I said, wow, this is kind of interesting. I'd like to find out more about this. Ended up writing about Free Agent Nation, and did that. And then and then that contained that and some other experiences I had contained the seeds of a whole new mind. And so it was really just, truly, it's not. As much as I really think it's true. I'm not trying to self-validate here. I don't think is that just making decisions for fundamental reasons and seeing what happens next. And so I think that the key here on your passion is that I think in some ways that I find that question very daunting. Yeah, what's your passion? I find that almost paralyzing in a way. I find it less paralyzing to say, what are you interested in doing next? And, and I think that's a good, and I find that far less daunting. It's like, okay, next. So that's what this is. Like, and the other thing though about work is that I've always been fascinated by work. Always been fascinated by like what people do for a living, and how people make a living, and what they do during that time. I always thought it was like, as a kid, like even going behind the counter of a store, oh, this is totally cool. Like, this is what they do here. And when I was a kid, Studs Terkel from right here in Chicago wrote a book called Working. He had these interviews with all these people in their jobs, and I remember reading that when I was a kid. And obviously starting with the baseball player and the prostitute first, but then reading the other ones and saying, this is really interesting, hearing people narrate about their work. And when I worked in politics, I worked on a lot of economic and labor kind of stuff. I worked at the Labor Department. I was a speechwriter for the Labor Secretary, and so I just found work just an endlessly interesting topic. And what I want to do is sort of sate my own curiosity for the moment about certain things. That's a big part of it, honestly. It's totally interdirected. But also, but that in itself isn't really all that satisfying. I can just go read a book. And so, what you want is, you want to have make some kind of small contribution to the world. Not, again, that's like, some of these things are so grandiose to me. It's like, everybody, you need to change the world. I find that paralyzing too.
What is that, Frank Feather? Think globally or act globally?
Yeah, well, I don't even, like, just act. I just think, like, act. I mean, that's enough. I've edited that down in manga form. Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
And so, so for me, it's like, it's what keeps me sort of doing this sort of work is when, in part, 4 people who I've never met are curious enough to have a conversation for an hour. That's totally cool. That's totally cool. This is going to be the best thing I do today, without any question. There's no question about that. When somebody sends me an email, it says, oh, okay, I'll give you an example. Somebody sent me an email not too long ago saying, I read Free Agent Nation when it first came out, and it took me 2 years or 3 years to get the guts to go along, to go out on my own. But I've done it, and I've done it now for like 5 years, and I'm happier than I've ever been, and I just want to thank you for writing this book. I'm like, okay, you've kept me in the writing business for 3 more weeks. Or even on A Whole New Mind, where you get emails that say, my parents never understood why I wanted to become a designer. They thought I was going to be starving, and even though I'm making a good living, they never really found it legitimate. And then I finally gave my dad this book, and he read it, and he said, "Oh, now I get it." 2 more weeks in the writing business, So it's that kind of thing, but not anything small. Small is beautiful.